Alrighty. Howdy, folks. Today we are going to be doing some prep work for Luanti Season 2. Luanti is an open source voxel engine game, kind of similar to Minecraft, more focused on mods and community built stuff as opposed to the storyline themed things that Mojang does with Minecraft. But if you're familiar with Minecraft, this will be a very familiar game, and if you've been on the server already, then you already know what I'm talking about. I've been hosting an instance of Luanti on my private network for about 3 or 4 months now, and we have enjoyed it for a while, but it's time to reset the server and start up Season 2 because we wanted to do a few different things with the mods that are requiring us to start over in a new world. So today what I'm going to be working on is actually setting up some stuff on Gitea. This is a Git hosting service, self-hosted as well, runs side by side with the actual Mindtest server here. And I'm going to be creating a milestone, which is just a collection of issues. If you haven't seen this kind of thing before, Gitea and GitHub organize projects using issues that basically just describe something that needs to be done on a certain project. So I have a project here, this Ansible role Luanti. This contains the Ansible playbook that I use to deploy this Luanti server. This is, well, at least it's the one that I used for Season 1, and we're going to be making some changes to it in order to accommodate Season 2. All of that will be contained in, well, all of the different tasks that need to be done in order to accomplish that will be stored in this milestone. Additionally, I will leave this milestone open for the duration of Season 2, and any of the technical things that we decide to change or work on will end up going into this milestone. I will be trying to create some labels for it as well. A lot of this is kind of experimental. I haven't used this sort of stuff as an administrator too much before, so this is kind of a experimental place to try things out. All right, so this is just going to be Season 2. And we're not going to put a due date on this. We can actually go back and look at some previous milestones and see how I've previously been using these. Generally speaking, what I am doing for these, or what I have done in the last quarter, was I just created a milestone for the quarter in whatever repository I'm working on, and then whatever tickets I happen to work on in that quarter go into the milestone. We can look at this one as an example. We can see that there are 4 open and 1 closed. This is the Q2 milestone, and we are currently in Q3 of 2025, just in case you haven't seen the date of this video. So this one has been closed. This has been done. 4 tickets are open, 1 issue is closed. Sorry, to be consistent, 4 issues are open and 1 issue is closed. And I don't know, seems to work well enough for me. I'm just kind of one person over here doing this by myself, and this is more designed for, teams of people working together. And I am using it with the intention of having teams of people working on this with me. But, just to get things started, it's just me. And so I just kind of have to see where things go and, feel my way around with this. So there are some issues in this previous milestone that are still open that have not been done. And actually, if we go to the Ansible role Luanti and the existing issues for that one, we can see the milestones here. There is a closed one for Q2 2025, and we can see that all of the issues are open. None of them were closed, so these are things that I started working on in this quarter but never finished. So these are probably going to move over into this Season 2. There's a bug flying out my window. Sorry, it's distracting me, but he doesn't seem to notice that it's a window. Anyway, so these will probably end up going into Season 2, but we will take this one step at a time. So I'm just going to create the milestone here, and I'm not even going to put much of a description here. There are things that I want to put in this description. This video probably will end up living in this description. It'll be housed on Min.io, which is where I host all of the recordings from these live streams. But then I post a link to it in this, along with whatever comment is in the metadata of the video. I've done that on Gitea before in an issue, and I have not done it on a milestone. So, we'll see. Maybe it does make sense there, maybe it doesn't, but we'll see. For the time being, I neither have a URL for this video, nor do I have anything else that I want to put in this description, so I'm just going to create this Season 2 milestone. It's pretty empty at the moment. Let's go to that closed milestone and see if there are any issues in there that want to move over. Automate configuration. This seems... Configuration currently defined under files must be copied to the deployment PVC manually. This process should be automated to facilitate continuous deployment. Yeah, so that is kind of basically the idea here. Let's take a look at the code so we know what I'm talking about in this issue. So if you haven't used Ansible playbooks before, learn about them. This is not the place for that. So this is here are the files that are in this Ansible playbook. And we can see that I have I believe this is the main config, and this one will pretty much be persistent across worlds, across seasons. I won't change this. Well, there probably will end up being some changes in this, but generally you're going to have one main config, and that's going to be the same across all of the seasons. And then this one, this world.mt, this is... well, this actually basically specifies the mods that are loaded and a few extra little variables up there. And this is what's really going to be changing from season to season. So my plan here is, so first of all, the issue that I just highlighted is saying that when we actually use this playbook, and we can look at the tasks, main, and okay, there's nothing in this. This is a placeholder, I see. But if we were to have code in this, this is where we should have the, the task. The code should be here that should do the thing that this issue is talking about. So where it says that these configuration files in that files directory need to be manually copied over. We can see that this playbook actually does nothing. In our tasks file, our task file is empty. So this is basically saying that we want, when I run that tasks file, when it eventually is populated with things, part of what should be in there is copying those configuration files over onto the remote machine, if all that makes sense. This is probably going to require some context, and again, this video is intended to live here on Gitea, so I guess I can assume that you have that context, even though most of you will probably be watching this on YouTube. Links in the description for cooler sites. Anyway, so do I want to put this into season 2? I guess I'm actually not going to, because of how specific it is. So this is saying specifically I want to copy the config files over to the new, or the remote instance, and yeah, I can do that. That's fine. It's not too hard, but that's not really the big fish to fry at this present moment. Let's look at some of these other ones. That will make sense a little bit more later. Basically, what's more important is getting the new configuration file for Season 2, and then I can deploy Season 2, and people can start playing on Season 2, and I can worry about automating these configurations later. I might even worry about those in Season 3. That's not really necessary to get Season 2 up and running, and getting it up and running ready for people to play, hopefully by this upcoming weekend, is the primary goal at this point. So this may in the future end up in the Season 2 milestone, but for the time being, I'm going to leave it out. The same thing with this matrix chat. I definitely want this as part of Season 2, but for the time being, I'm just going to be thinking about getting this up and running. Same thing with defining commodity markets. That's part of a mod, and I might not even do this at all. So instead, I'm going to create a new issue that'll be the first issue in our milestone. So I'll just go ahead and put the milestone that it is Season 2. And what do I need to do here? I need to, well, let's say first store Season 1 config files. So in the existing server, the config files that are living on that live instance right now have probably been changed since I was modifying this repository. So before I start doing anything for season 2, I want to make sure that I have the original configs for season 1 saved here, and not have any problems. So let's see. I don't think this even needs a description. I think I can just post this as is. It says what it needs in the title, and I think this is kind of superfluous. But I think, is it necessary to leave a comment at all? What happens if I leave no comment? Let's take a look. It says no description provided. That's kind of ugly. So let's edit this, and let's give a little bit of a description. So now we've learned, always add a description. What do I want to say here? No, let's to reflect the current things. Like, work with me, people. Here, there's a chat. I don't think there are any viewers this. I am still talking to myself. Anyway, we want to update the season 1 config files in this repository to reflect the current state of the system, the current configurations, the actual. No, come on. It's a lot harder when you're on a live stream. I want it to reflect the values to. Yeah, let's just do, there we go. Easy. Let's move on. Okay, so we've learned to add a description. Okay. So let's hop over to this milestone. It's a little easier to see things and what it starts to look like once we start adding stuff. So we're going to get the season 1 config files, and then we're going to need to create same deal here. Season 1 config files can be copied and modified. I think I feel like these titles should always have like all caps. These are the kind of like arbitrary decisions that drive me kind of crazy, but I think about them a lot. Yeah, let's leave that as that. We're just getting things kind of up and running here. This is probably not the most like exciting video of all time, but it's a bit of a behind the scenes look at the administration side. These are the things that I need to do in order to get ready for this season 2, and will eventually include, if people are requesting mods, this is where I'm going to ask people to do that. And I'll show you how I will request that later. So do I want to say that one is dependent on the other? No, not really. I mean, I guess unless, yeah, I guess if I'm copying them, so we can add a dependency, season 2. It's not really a dependency. I don't like adding that as a dependency for this one, because we don't necessarily need to have the season 1 config file saved in order to create our season 2 config files. We can just make our season 2 config files from scratch. This is just a suggestion. We can achieve this however we want. So it's not technically a dependency. This doesn't technically depend on the first issue, so we're not going to do that. Okay, but creating the season 2 config files does require me to do a few other things. I need the milestone. No, I don't think I actually needed that, because did it auto-populate that field with the milestone? It does auto-populate this field. Okay, so that's interesting. So I need to get the mods sorted out for season 2. And now I want to think about, do I want to make this granular and have an issue for every single mod that I want to install? Probably not, because I don't necessarily have a full list. I think I'll just create one issue that is to download and set up all the mods and make sure all of them are ready, and I'll just add comments into this that will be, each individual mod. That might not be a great way to do this. Another way to do this would be to have like this issue be let's just call it initial mods. And so there are a couple of things here. More than a couple. A few things even. So the first thing is there are, the first thing is that there are two things. The second thing is there's another thing. The first thing is that there are two things. Wow. So installing these mods has two steps. The first is downloading the mods and putting them onto the PVC that is running in Kubernetes that ends up being mounted to the Docker container that is running Luanti. So those are all stored in a persistent volume claim, and I have to manually download the mods and unpack them into that persistent volume claim in order to use them. And then there's the step of modifying the configuration files to say what should be loaded from what's in that mods directory. And I could create an issue that is both of those or just one of those. I think, along the same lines, I'm just going to keep everything together in one issue. And if need be, I can create smaller issues and say that this one depends on those smaller ones, and have it as a way of collecting them all together. Maybe that's, yeah. Let's do that. I think that's generally a good way to do it. You create one big issue that says I'm going to do this broad task, and if it becomes more substantial than is covered in the one ticket, then you can bifurcate it into different tickets that can themselves be split into more tickets. And doing it dynamically like that allows you to not waste a lot of time thinking about the organizational stuff and focus more on building the thing. And once it becomes a little unwieldy doing it in one ticket, then you can kind of split it off into things. So that's just one approach. And that's the approach we're going to use here. So this is going to be, okay, I'm actually going to create a list. Okay, that's downloading them, putting them on the PVC. Modify the config files to load those mods. So there was a third thing, but now I'm not remembering what it is. I guess I need to test it. So like, a way to do this is to download all those mods, put them in the PVC, restart the server, and then it will take the existing config file and just add all of the new mods to the end, and then that can be taken as the config file, and I can just set true and false for the correct values. There are some mods that I'm going to be removing and replacing, so we'll have to see there. Okay, so is there anything else in this one? I don't think so. And if there are, we can add them later. Okay. Okay, so yeah, now I guess the third thing is like those specific mods. So some of them have dependencies, and some like optional dependencies and required dependencies, and some things conflict with other things, and so there's some amount of thought process that goes into some of these mods, and I guess that's where I would create a separate ticket if one mod is a little bit much. So I guess this one is good. Okay, yeah, and here we get little checkboxes using that markdown script, so I can do these one at a time. I might even create dependencies that are, one dependency for each of these, and then as I complete the dependency, you can check it off here. So, it's a little bit more of an art than a science here. Let's go to our milestone. Now, I think that's all I really need to do. It's not that much. It's not that much. Not that much. So let me think through it real quick. We'll get the season 1 files, put them on here. That's this. Then I'm going to download my mods and put them into the PVC. I'm going to restart the server, and that is going to generate the season 2 config file that I'm interested in. And I'll modify that so it has, it loads the correct mods and not the incorrect mods. And yeah, that's the season 2 config file. I'll manually configure the world file or the master config. Okay, yeah, I think that's basically the plan. Once I do that, oh, there are a few things I need to do. Yep. A little bit more specific on the description this time. Let's get a link. And we're going to put it over here. I'm a little bit slow moving my mouse and stuff around on this. And the reason for that is I'm actually looking at, the monitor I'm looking at is showing me OBS, Open Broadcast Studio, which is what I'm using for live streaming. Then I have a smaller screen here, which is the live stream chat. And then I have a television over there. And that's what's actually, that's what you're seeing here. And so I'm looking at a little bit of a delayed rendition of what I'm actually doing. It's a little bit slow, but it looks really nice. So anyway, what was I doing? The season 1 discourse thread, and let's link that. Okay, so yes, once the season is over, once we're done with season 1, I'm going to take the, it's in the background. the folder that contains all of the data for season 1, I'm going to compress it into a tarball and publish it on my own services and make it available for people to download. Other people have put work into this, so I want them to be able to revisit it and load it up on their own systems. So cool. Let's go back to the milestone and see. Season 1 world download, season 2 initial mods. Okay, so yeah, let's think through the process again. Step 1 is I'm going to take the config files that currently exist and I'm going to save them in this repo. Step 2 is I'm going to download the mods that I want and put them into the PVC of the Kubernetes PVC for Luanti. That's going to take care of the first bullet point on this issue. Then I am going to restart the server. That's going to generate the config file that I need for this, and I will do the thing. I will, modify it and keep it stored here. Yeah, then we have an option. At that point, that might be a good time to think about, where is it? This automate configuration. At that point, I would have to manually do some steps. Either I will have to manually copy those files over and restart the server like that, or I am going to have to set up this automation. It's probably a better idea to go ahead and set up the automation while I'm here thinking about it, but this isn't quite like a Helm chart, your usual Helm chart. Let's see if I can, it won't be in gaming. The original for this will be over here. There it is. Okay, so it is a Helm chart. Yeah, but we can see that. So this Helm chart, this executes in a Kubernetes cluster to modify Kubernetes resources and create the the pods and the PVCs and all of that stuff from within Kubernetes. And what I'm actually needing to do, either manually or through this automation, is to not use Kubernetes, but go into the underlying system and the underlying file storage system and modify files like that. So if you're not familiar with how my Kubernetes cluster is currently set up, it's one physical server with 15 or 16 virtual machines. Each of those is part of this Kubernetes cluster, and there's a 32 terabyte RAID array on the physical machine that's just mounted to a directory, and that directory is an NFS file store in Kubernetes. So I can go on to the actual physical machine, browse the file system of that RAID array, and I see exactly what is stored in Kubernetes raw. So it's a very safe way to store data. But what I mean when I'm saying I want to automate the configuration is not that I want to, from within the Kubernetes environment where I would be deploying the Helm chart running this, I don't want to do that configuration from here. I actually want to copy those files over on the underlying system, which doesn't really work well side by side when you're running a Helm chart from within. So when I'm calling this Ansible playbook, I'm going to specify the host on which it should run. And when I want it to deploy, the host is going to be the control plane for the Kubernetes cluster. It's going to be a virtual machine. And when I want to do this automated configuration, it's going to be the underlying server, the PowerEdge T640. So this automation, while it would be better to set this up while I am thinking about it and needing to do it, that's a better practice. It's actually quite a bit more complex than just modifying your usual Helm chart, and I would need to think about a good way to do this. So it might be that I just manually copy those over, and I suppose the best way to represent that in the milestone is to create an issue that says, well, I guess we can actually, let's just add a comment here saying, number 2. I actually prefer to give the full name here. You know, you can reference issues in Gitea just by specifying their name. So if I write something like, let me go down here. If I write closes number 2, then that phrase is going to create a link between these issues. So as soon as this one closes, that one will close. I think closes might only work when you're putting comments on a pull request. But like depends on or blocks. I know those two words, I think those two words work for between issues. So, you know, there are some keywords we can use here to specify things. But, you know, you can just specify the number, and that refers to an issue within the same repository. If you want to specify issues across repositories, you can give the full name, and you can give the full name to specify issues within the same repository. So, you know, it's a bit more verbose, but I'll just go ahead and give the full reference. And I don't think completing is one of the keywords that would link this in any way. So we'll put this comment here. Okay. Okay, so now labels. What about labels? I don't know about labels. How do labels work? Edit Milestone. Labels. Do these exist within a single use label set? No labels exist. Create a label with new label or use a predefined label set. Oh, okay. So, bug, duplicate, enhancement, help wanted, invalid question. Okay, so here's the thing. I was thinking about coming over here to create a label that was specifically mod requests. And I was going to say that when users or members of the server, players, are requesting a new mod for the server, they should use one of these labels. And the label should be, you know, the most explicit possible label is going to be mod requests. But we have this default label set. And I don't know. Enhancement seems appropriate. And using the default set, I would be able to use the same default set across all projects and all repositories. And, you know, if I just say use the default set ubiquitously, unless there's a really, really good reason to use something other than the default set. Let's see, what else is there? Advanced set. Kind, feature. Why are they kind? What's kind about them? Compat. What does this mean? Reviewed / confirmed, reviewed / won't fix. That makes sense. Status / needs more info, status / blocked. Okay, okay, I think I see it. It's like category / you know, individual. So I don't know if I like this. This is not, well, okay, I guess the idea here is that you would put like, from kind, you would pick one of these labels from kind, and then from compat, there's only one compat, breaking. Compatibility, and you would say that this breaks compatibility. Okay, I can see that. Reviewed, and you can have it reviewed as duplicate, invalid, confirmed, or won't fix. So like, yeah, here's where it kind of makes sense, is like, it can be the kind of bug. Okay, let's change that. Let's say the kind is going to be feature, but this feature is going to be breaking compatibility. I'm going to then review it and confirm it, and we'll say that the status is blocked and the priority is medium. So okay, this advanced one, this makes sense. But to go back to the point that I was making a second ago, using the defaults and finding ways to take the defaults and just kind of use them, it makes for a really easy way to be seamless across all these repositories. I could, make individual labels specific for each one, each repository, that are like very tailored for each one, or I can use these defaults. I think you get it. So, yeah, let's just start with the default. And if this becomes more complicated, then we'll do that, but let's just do this. Yeah, nice. And I think I will ask people to use this enhancement label to request mods. Yeah, all right. So let's go ahead and label. Let's do some labels. Thinking about how I would label the existing issues. Let's go back to the milestone. I just said that, people should use the enhancement label to request mods. But like, what about like, what is this? It's not really a new feature. Let's try a different one. Initial mods. Okay, that works. What about the others? Yeah, the config files. What would I call this? It's an enhancement, isn't it? Maybe mod requests should go into questions. People are asking, hey, can we have this mod? And then another issue should be created to say, deploy that mod. That's a bit superfluous, but maybe if it starts as a question of like, can we have this mod? And then people debate it in the comments there. And if we decide yes, then we can remove this question label and turn it into an enhancement label. And that's how we can go through the workflow here. I like that. That works for me. Cool. These are also enhancements then, because this is a new feature, having these config files. Is it superfluous to label every single thing? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it just for this, and we'll see what we think about it. That's an enhancement. Or is this a bug? Because technically the current config files are incorrect. So maybe this is a bug. Let's be fun. Let's be fun. Let's be dangerous, as John Mulaney would say. Season 1 download, I don't think that's anything. Let's leave a label off of that one. Cool. Oh, and look at this. Look at this. See that little guy right there? That is because I put in bullet points. Since I have these 2 check boxes, we actually get like that 50% complete thing. That's not what I wanted to click. That 0 out of 2 tasks completed on this. Okay, so that's good. Great. So I believe that's probably gonna do it for this live stream. Don't see any chat messages, and basically what I'm going to do is edit this milestone, and I'm going to put in here a link to this video. Hopefully it will render. Also a little comment that, you know, is going to be the metadata comment for this video. I'm also going to put eventually a link to the Season 2 Luanti discourse thread. That does not exist yet though, so TBD on that. And yeah, I think that's all I wanted to show here. Let me just take one last look at that milestone, that beautiful milestone that we have created here together. Let's see it. Yeah, I might still end up putting that automate configurations into this. Ouch. But we'll see. I'm kind of curious to do it actually. So let's take a look. Let's take a look. So why I'm curious is that it already exists in the Q2 milestone. And so what happens when I put it in the new milestone? Can it be in both milestones? Doesn't look like it. This is probably going to update. Modify the milestone from Q2 to Season 2 now. Okay, so I like that. I like that it's giving me this log of these things that are happening. And this tells me that in the future, my plan of doing these, you know, quarter-based milestones kind of will end up working for the reason of it maintaining this log. So as I create issues, I can create them in a specific milestone, whichever milestone I happen to be in, whichever quarter I happen to be in. And then if I don't happen to do it in that quarterstone, I can, you know, yeah, I can move it to the next milestone or whenever I happen to pick it back up, and I'll get this nice log of all the different times that I've worked on it in all the different quarters. And yeah, so I think I like that. This one's Luanti is going to be a bit different since I'm focusing on, you know, seasons here instead of quarters. But you know, we'll see. I might end up doing both of those things. We'll see. For other stuff, I'll probably stick with the quarters. But anyway, I digress. And the big point here is that we have got our Season 2 milestone set up and ready to go. This will continue to develop and be fleshed out as the season progresses. But I think that's going to do it for now. This video will probably end up in the description here, and I'll put a link to this on YouTube if you're watching there. And yeah, feel free to like and subscribe as well if you're on YouTube, because that helps out the channel. Helps out more if you join us over here, but you know, do whatever you want to do. Cool. Thanks for joining. Toodles.